Good to be with you today. Glad you're watching this. So this summer we've been in this sermon series of the path of discipleship and where it takes us and how it takes us and our response to it. We've discussed many things and we have many things yet to discuss. Beginning last week and now this week and next week we're going to be in some parables that Jesus uses in the 13th chapter of Matthew. You might remember what a parable is and why Jesus uses a parable. A parable begins in the world that we know, right? We know about seeds, we know about dirt, we know about sheep, we know about yeast, right? So the parable begins in a world that we identify with, that we know. Jesus shows he knows what world we're living in. But as we go through the parable, it ends in a different reality. It ends in God's world. And so the purpose of the parable is to take us from our reality and bring us as disciples into God's reality. And almost all parables answer a particular question, though the question is not always stated. Like here in the 13th chapter of Matthew, Jesus just goes parable after parable after parable, so it's kind of up to us to figure out what particular question that Jesus is attempting to answer. So this week's parable is the parable of the weeds among the wheat. So if you might remember the parable, the homeowner, the farmer, plants his field with good seed, with wheat. Well, unbeknownst to the homeowner and the servants, somewhere in the night, others came in and planted it with bad seed. And so it begins to grow, and they see all these weeds among the wheat, or they see all the bad among the good. And so the servants come to the homeowner and they ask the homeowner, should we not go out there and pull up all these bad things? Should we not pull the weeds? And the homeowner says, absolutely not. You will cause more damage by looking at the bad than you will by leaving it alone. So what does this tell us? Part of what I think the unstated question that Jesus is trying to answer is, well, what then do we do about sin? Right? What do we do about the evil in this world? Should we not just go out and yank all the evil and the badness that we see? Well, the homeowner, which is God, says, well, you're going to do more harm than good when you try to do that. Okay? One, it says within this world that God created, within this space that we take up, there is this reality of sin and evil within it. That's part of life, right? Part of what we take up. Our inclination, right? What we want to do is make this world as perfect as we can, that we're looking for perfection, that we're looking for goodness. But here's the problem with that, right? When we're out there pulling up all the weeds, not all of us are going to agree on what weeds are. And so in our haste and in our impatience, we pull up a lot of good plans along with the bad. We do a lot of harm to the good people as we're trying to maintain harm to the bad. I don't know about you, I don't always know what a weed is. My mother would send me out to the garden to weed the garden. I'd just pull up everything because it all looked the same to me. I could not tell the difference. And I think that's what the homeowner is trying to tell us, right? That you as a servant, that you as a disciple will never love enough, that you will never know enough, and that you will never care enough to be able to judge rightly what is a weed and what is wheat. So don't do any harm, right? The first rule in United Methodism, don't do any harm. Right? In our haste to be good, to be perfect, right? We will cause harm. We don't want to cause harm. The homeowner says, wait until the harvest. At the harvest, I will separate the wheat from the wheat. It also seems to me in our haste and in our impatience to take care of sin, that it just shows our lack of faith. In our haste to judge others, it shows that we don't trust God enough to take care of what God said God will take care of. It shows that God doesn't take care of the sinner like we think God should take care of the sinner. Right? We know better. We can do a better job. Let's not wait. Let's just take care of it now. Let's trust God to do God's work. Right? Our job, the path of a disciple, the job of a follower of Christ is not to pull out the weeds. Our job is to sow seeds, to keep planting seeds of love and grace and peace and hope. Let those things crowd out the wheat or the weeds instead of the weeds crowding out the good. Because this is what I'm fearful of, right? You are a weed to somebody. I don't care who you are and what you do, you are a weed to somebody, a weed that somebody else would like to pluck out of this world. How does that make you feel? Let us be careful in our judgment. Because this is what we also know. Is for those who seem like a lost cause to us is never a lost cause to God. Let this field that we reside in be a field of grace. Let's let God work God's grace to transform, to change, to bring the world to peace. Let us do our job, but let us trust God to do God's job. We are currently going through this surge of trying to make the church pure and holy and saintly. It will not happen. Every time there's been a surge to make the church pure, it has always lost and always caused harm. Evil and sin will always be amongst us. And we can either choose to focus on the evil, or we can choose to focus on the goodness. Throughout it all, this parable also tells us that God's presence is always here, that God's presence never leaves us. Even when we're in the midst of weeds, God is here. I know this is kind of heavy, and I know it's kind of long. I know it's not something that we really want to talk about, but it's part of being a disciple. The path of discipleship's not always easy, and it's not always nice. It can be also quite messy and unpretty. But that's who we're called to be. So peace in your travels, and peace in your sowing of seed.